Welcome to the Clever Dicks podcast, a podcast for swimmers focusing on everyday questions from regular folks who just enjoy swimming. Right, good day all. This is the Clever Dicks podcast, episode 1. Duncan and myself, Jim, are going to talk about some swimming topics, and today we thought we'd talk about, is swimming an elitist sport? Duncan, what were you thinking when you thought of that particular topic?
Jim, I wasn't thinking, don't be ridiculous, but generally speaking, if you think of swimming, there's quite a small following, right? Specifically here in New Zealand, I reckon it could be a much bigger sport than what it is. And coming from South Africa, my background, similar story. And I reckon through my own personal sort of journey, I would definitely put swimming up there as an elitist sport. Couple of reasons throw out on the table, and you can agree or disagree with me. I guess the first thing is $8, $9, $10 in certain places to go for a swim. I reckon that's pretty steep, right? If you're swimming relatively serious, you're swimming 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, that's freaking expensive, right? And that's if you're swimming on your own. If you're like me, I've got 5 kids. When I go down to the pool, I want to take a couple of them with me, right? Give my wife a break. It's an expensive journey out, right? That's before you know, $40 a pair of goggles, some decent togs, some equipment, some paddles or snorkel, etc., etc. So from that perspective, I think it's pretty expensive. And if we are wanting to get a nation that is behind swimming and doing better in the Olympics and all that things down the line, got to make it cheaper. If you go to the gym, you can get a gym contract for like $15 a week, and you can go to gym twice a day, every day for 7 days, you know, for $15. Yes, you can go into the ocean for free. Not that safe to go out on your own if you don't know what you're doing. I reckon it's pretty elitist. Then if you go back to the Olympics and you look at the Olympics and you go, wow, where's all the black athletes? Where's all the Kenyans? Where's the Ethiopians? Where's the Islanders? Why don't they do well? I don't know, Jim. I reckon it's an elitist sport, and I think we can do better.
Well, I think you're right when it comes to the competition side of it. Getting into a pool is expensive. Getting the equipment is expensive. Having good coaching is very expensive. But I think that there are quite a lot of options which aren't quite as dear. So you said that...
what does dear mean to the younger community, Jim? You're like 100 years old. Nobody knows what that means.
Look, no, I'm not 100 years old. My 100th birthday is in 2 years' time. Here in New Zealand, or at least in Auckland, the youngsters can get into pools really cheap. In fact, a lot of the municipal pools you can get in for free if you're under 16. And that's trying to get people a little bit more water safe. I think that there are a fair amount of opportunities to get into the sea and into lakes and rivers that are relatively safe. But I will agree with you, that's not all year.
So is it a cool factor? So for example, how many 12-year-olds do you know that are super eager beaver to get up at 5 o'clock every morning and go and grind out 3Ks, 4Ks before school? Yeah, maybe it's easier to go and play hockey.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you say is swimming elitist, it's whether you're talking about the sport or just swimming in general. So I was sort of taking the view of it of just getting people into the water, getting people safe, and most importantly, just getting people to enjoy themselves in the water, feel comfortable. That I don't think is at least elitist.
Yeah.
I think that there is a problem. Definitely in New Zealand, we have a shocking drowning rate all the way through the country.
What is that rate? Do you know more or less?
No, but we are right up in the top of the OECD rankings. Now, part of that is that nobody in New Zealand is very far away from the sea. I think if you get more than 100 kilometres away from the sea, that's about it in New Zealand. So everybody's got access to open water, to rivers, to lakes. and there's other parts in the world where that doesn't happen. But our fatality rate is truly shocking, and I think that's because two reasons: that we don't give the opportunity for people at school to learn how to treat water safely. And the other part of it is that we have immigration from parts of the world where they haven't had that same opportunity, and don't realize the risks of it. So I would really like to get people to be water safe, and I think that doesn't need to be elitist. The sports side of it I see as slightly different.
Okay, fair comment. So if we're looking at the sports side of it, let's take marathon swimming as an example. In New Zealand, there's a dick measuring contest called the Triple Crown. Globally, it's the Ocean 7. Now, if you swim the Triple Crown, the Triple Crown in New Zealand, right, it consists of 3 swims. One is the 40-kilometer length of Lake Taupo. Then there is a Cook Strait crossing, either direction, depending on the weather, I guess, or the swimmer. And then there's the swim across the Fovo Strait from Stewart Island to the mainland. Now, is that a real, honest recognition of a decent marathon swimmer in New Zealand? Or is it, hey, my checkbook's a little bit bigger than yours and I can afford to go and spend, I don't know, 4 or 5 grand on a swim?
Well, I think you're absolutely right on that one. It is an expensive option to do it. I know that there are cheaper ways to do it, to get your friends and family to do it, but that's probably not very safe. You really do need the experience. So
I mean, Phil Rush manages those 3 swims, right? And he's a legend in his own skin, right? He's done all of those swims.
Yeah.
He's done a triple English Channel, as far as I'm aware, and I mean, he's really one of New Zealand's best open water swimmers, going back 50 years or whatever the case might be. You know, I think he's really right up there. Now, when he did it, you know, he didn't, he couldn't just Google, you know, Lake Taupo and see where to put some funds and get a swim done. He had to do it, I guess, on his own account, right? He had to do the research. He had to figure out how to work the weather. He had to find a boatsman. I reckon it was much more of an adventure and much more of an achievement back then to what it is now. Because now it's really just a swim.
Having said that, yes, I agree with you. But when you look at, so Phil is right up there in the world. But I mean, he cut his teeth by doing competitive marathon swimming overseas. By the time he came and did a lot of these swims, he was really experienced at long distance and cold water swimming. So he knew the questions to ask. Now, there might not have been an organization that he could go along and throw a checkbook at that would just give him some support. He probably had to organize it all himself. But when you look or listen to a lot of the marathon swimmers, they often organize a lot of this stuff themselves. It really is the English Channel and
swims. If you organize it by yourself, is it still recognized?
It will be recognized, but each of them have got their own rules around. So you might organize it yourself, but have to get the observer and there's going to be protocols that you need to do, but it doesn't mean that you have to go to a professional organization. Which can be challenging. I know that this last season there have been challenges in Japan doing one of the swims there where there was very limited options for swimmers to actually use, and quite
there was the chickie that swam the quadruple English Channel, Sarah Thomas.
Yeah, but there was about 10 people who ended up in the same situation as her.
Yeah.
So it can be challenging, but to go to Japan and organise yourself would probably be impossible.
What was the situation? So she did the training. I reckon there was it was obviously part of the Ocean 7 swim. She went across there to do the swim and she couldn't do it, right?
Yeah, so the Coast Guard over there got some pretty strong rules. They
Yep.
only allow people to swim during daylight hours, which really limits your
Yep.
opportunities.
On a long swim like that.
And it's a very tricky and challenging swim at the best of times. So once, in fairness to the companies trying to run this, you've got to get the tides, you've got to get the weather and the wind, and now you've got this constrained sort of timing thing. So yeah, they had a whole bunch of challenges. But I think that it's probably doable by yourself, but maybe not in a country like Japan, which is struggling with the language, struggling with the culture.
You're Japanese, right?
Unless you're Japanese, but if you wanted to go and organise your own, I don't know, swim around Manhattan or something in the US, it probably is something that with enough research you could organise yourself. Whether it's worth doing that, I wouldn't know.
So, I mean, if you wanted to do something locally, as a Kiwi, so let's say we wanted to do Lake Taupo, and I'm on a shoestring budget. Where do you start? What do you do? I mean, what would you do?
Well, you've got to either you go and you find a mate with a boat,
Yeah.
and yeah, so pretty much is find a mate with a boat, get them to be committed. You need possibly a couple of other people to support. You would need to work out what the rules or protocols are around having a swim recognised, if that was your goal.
So you would drop, in this case, you would drop Phil Rush a bit of a note to say, hey, we want to do it, we don't have the budget, because I think he's pretty cool like that. He would
I think
give
so.
you some guidance.
I think isn't New Zealand setting up a marathon swimming
I believe so.
federation, so you could get the the things from there.
Yep.
And then you could go and do it. Now, I think what you have to realise is that you're taking more of a risk, and you need to be aware of that. If you go with somebody like Phil Rush, he's done it so many times. The advice you're going to get is going to be absolutely top notch. He's going to tell you things not to do, things to do. He will give you help with nutrition and things like that. If you're going to do it on your own, you really are pushing a lot more boundaries. So we know that there are some people who have kind of just done it with mates, and it's been hard.
The guys that have been successful, give them big high fives, because I reckon it's, like I said, it goes back, in my mind, 30 years ago, when it was a little bit more of a challenge to get it done. Think back to that dude who did the first English channel. What's his name? Captain Wayne Bebb. I mean, he was in a rowing boat having shots of vodka, for his nutrition to get across. So, I mean, what are the other things if you wanted to do it on your own? I know you have to have, for example, a tracker these days, so you need to get hold of a tracker, or I believe a Garmin GPS track of the swim these days is sufficient, as long as you've got that observer that can give the GPS coordinates of the start and the finish. I think there needs to be some videos of start, during, and sort of end of swim. I
think that it's all doable on the cheap. The challenge with those doing it yourself ones is timing. So quite often you will say, okay, I'm going to do a particular swim, and you get your guys and say, I'm going to do it on this particular day, and the weather's just bad. So having a whole team that has got the same flexibility possibly as a swimmer is more challenging. You can't say, well, I'm going to do it on Saturday with the rain down Sunday. Well, you could say that, but if the weather is bad on both of those days, you drive home on the Monday and it's lovely weather, you're going to be quite disappointed. So
if you can't do it on your own and you can't afford to do it with the professionals, what do you do? How do you?
Well, I suppose it's quite a unique thing that we're actually talking about, doing some of these long solo swims.
It's becoming more and more popular, right? I think, if you go back 10 years ago, if you came across somebody that had done, I don't know, whatever, Lake Taupo or a swim across Lake Malawi, for example, they were quite niche, quite interesting stories, and they didn't happen that often. It's definitely, open water swimming, in my mind, or from what I'm seeing sitting on the side, is definitely gained in participants. There's a lot more people giving it a go. And I think there's a lot more people realizing that, hey, I can swim for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, or whatever the case might be. And there's definitely more people doing the longer swims. Now, with that, to your point, becomes, if it's not the elitist scenario where I don't know, mid-50s and I've done well with my business and I've got a little bit of disposable income, it's hard, right? So what do you do? I mean, if I look at New Zealand, there's the Epic, which is national champs as far as I'm aware, 10Ks.
Yeah.
So you can go and do a 10K as part of a race and, earn some stripes, get some experience, and pay whatever it is to do that race, $100, $120 or something like that. But to do anything longer, you got to find the cash, right?
Well, there's two things, I think. First of all, we people need to work out the why that they're going to go and do it. So there's some people that would really like to do these recognized events, get themselves into a long swim database or a national record or something like that. And I did a triple crown or something like that. There are other people who just want to challenge themselves, and there's people like that all over the world. And in that case, then it doesn't really matter. You're not trying to prove anything to anybody other than yourself. So, you look at people who do the chopper challenge in Auckland. So
what's that?
The chopper challenge in Auckland is
only
a 20.
Choppers can do it.
Yeah, you've got to be a chopper. So it's a 20-kilometer swim from Waiheke Island back to Auckland when it's running in non-COVID times. Yep. And the goal of that one is to raise money for a charity, for a rescue helicopter charity. Okay, so it's quite a long swim. 20 k's is right up there for many swimmers, but you don't get onto databases, you don't do anything, and the rules around that is if you were to be short on time or something like that, the organizer would probably pick you up and take you to the end so you could swim in. So people swim that one to raise charity, but mostly just as a to prove to yourself that you can do it. So I think the first part of it is the motivation for why people are doing it. I think if you want to be sort of officially globally recognized, it is going to cost money, whether you do it yourself or whether you hire someone else.
Fair enough, right.
The second thing that I think we haven't really covered here, and I don't know how hard it would be, is if you didn't have a big checkbook, whether you would be able to get any kind of sponsorships. So I don't know of anybody who's gone down that route. I would imagine it's pretty hard because I don't know what visibility you'd be providing for your sponsor. It's probably more of a gift than a sponsorship if you're doing some of these events. There's possibly a couple of really well-known people actually get sponsorships, but that's
there's definitely a couple that I come across, and again, that would probably depend on, in today's day and age, what does your social media platform look like on a personal level? And if I've got 12 followers.
Wow, you're popular.
Yeah, no, it's my family. It's 8 kids and my grandparents and you. But yeah, if you've got no followers, for a brand or a company to throw 10 grand at you to do a swim, there's not a lot in it for them. You're not going to be in the newspaper for doing a swim like that. Even if you are, where's the branding? You can't, your body's 80% underwater. You can maybe see a little bit on a swim cap. But if you've got social media and you've got 157,000 followers, maybe, right?
Yeah,
because, if you go and you punt, hey guys, I'm sponsored by, Fred's Biltong, and I give them a post or two every day for 3 months, there's a bit of coverage there, right? But other than that, nobody's going to sponsor anybody to do an open water swim race, right? Maybe if you're younger, you'll get your dad to sponsor you, but that's probably about it. But let's shift direction again. We were speaking about swimming being an elitist sport or not. Remember Eric the Eel?
Yes, Olympic legend.
What country was he from again? I can't remember.
From Africa.
Somewhere in Africa, yeah. Okay, so he arrived there and he could swim, right? He could literally swim, but he wasn't an Olympic athlete, right? And if I remember correctly, in his heat, there was a false start. He was super slow off the block, so he was the only one that was not disqualified. And then he got to swim his race on his own. And the crowds were like, yay, giving him like a massive big boost, because he really showed like a massive amount of courage and heart to get through it. But his technique was shit. His time was slow. He was really bad.
You're saying he swims like me?
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim the Eel and Eric the Eel. Get some t-shirts made, right? But where's the rest of the African nation, right? Obviously South Africa does well. South Africa does well through primarily their white athletes, right? And again, I'm touching on maybe that's why it's a little bit more elitist, because generally speaking, stereotypical, those white South Africans can afford the coaching and the pools, whereas a lot of the black South Africans can't. If you go back to the 2000s and the late sort of 96 Olympics, 2000 Olympics, to my knowledge, I might be wrong, but a lot of that success came from South African kids that had gone to American universities that then translated that into the Olympics, and they kicked ass, right? Other than that, you've got Australia doing well in the Olympics, you've got the US doing well in the Olympics. To the US credit,
A number of European countries.
yeah. But to America's credit, there's a lot of mixed races in the Olympics, so they're doing something right. But yeah, you know, the UK, all of those sort of richer, I guess, countries that have got a little bit more of an infrastructure for swimming tend to do well, right?
So I think that you've actually put your finger on it. I think it's...
Finger on it or finger in it? I don't put my finger in it.
Yeah. So I think when you look at it, it's the swimmers are coming from countries that are kind of wealthy and have got the ability to put that infrastructure in place. You look at Australia have done really, really well. And then you go over there and their swimming pools are just fantastic. They're all over the place. They're 50 metres. There's lots of them. And because there's lots of them, I don't know whether they're particularly cheap to get into, but they're always available. So you've got a very much broader base. As soon as you get into some of the poorer countries, a swimming pool is a luxury, whether you can afford to or not. You know, you might have people who could be the best swimmers, but there's no swimming pool close to them, so they never actually find out that they're good. And also, you know, it needs to be everybody swimming, because both of us started swimming after running, and neither of us are going to set the world alight with our performances.
Speak for yourself. My day's waiting. I'm going to compete against Eric the Eel.
You're going to compete against Eric the Eel. I look forward to seeing your face when you get thumped. So I think it's just having that ubiquity and that early start in life is... You know, if you're looking at being competitive, it's kind of like a lot of sports. You know, in order to be truly competitive, you have to choose your parents well, but you also need to have the right facilities available and things like that. Yeah.
So you reckon there's enough pools in New Zealand?
No, I don't think that there is. I am disappointed in the number of primary schools that have had to close their pools because they're just expensive to run.
And obviously there's a safety component as well, right? You've got people running around there.
We're really lucky. The school that our children went to, they built a pool while other people were closing pools down. So that was pretty cool. But it takes effort, and luckily we live in a suburb that's relatively well off, so that they were able to actually do the fundraising to actually get the pool.
Right.
Yeah, get the politicians
involved. Going to come and get some shit done. Right. Need more pools. So, East Coast, North Shore, no sharks, pretty safe, pretty flat most of the time, right?
Yeah.
What would happen?
Well, there's lots of sharks, but they're all friendly.
Yeah,
you know,
they're well fed and friendly, and
yeah.
only if you're on a surfboard looking like a
drongo.
So, the point I'm making is I was chatting to a coach from Fiji, and basically the same story in Fiji, you can imagine, right? There's tons of talent, tons of kids who want to swim but no facilities. And there's a group, and I can't remember what their name is right now, but basically they do the squad swimming. So guys that are competing for 50-meter butterfly, backstroke, IMs, etc. They train in the ocean. So the guys go and they drop some lane ropes in the ocean, and they're literally doing a 50-meter scenario in the ocean. Obviously they can't tumble turn because there's nothing to push against. They can't dive, all of that type of stuff. There's a current, there's this, there's that, but they're in the ocean and they're swimming. If we put some shark nets, for example, in a bay here with some permanent lane ropes, would that facilitate more people getting into the ocean?
I'm not convinced.
I went to a place a couple of years ago, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jim. It was called Repulse Bay in Hong Kong, which had that scenario. So they had shark nets, which mentally, people were happy to go and swim there, which we wouldn't need because our sharks are friendly. But they had these lane ropes, right? And the experienced guys would just jump in, skip the lane ropes, and they would go off into the distance and swim around, the islands and come back. But if you were feeling a little less confident, you'd jump in and you'd go up and down the lane ropes, right? So here we don't have that scenario. Surely, if we chuck some lane ropes in here, my mind says to me, Joe at the end of the road, who's, thought about giving it a go, might actually give it a go. Right? He doesn't want to join a group, he doesn't want to swim at the pool, or whatever the case might be. He's intimidated by the pool because everybody touches his toes and kicks him out the way. I reckon that would work. No?
I'm not convinced. I think that there's enough. People just don't get in. Getting into the sea is not just because it's free. There's a whole bunch of people who just don't seem to want to swim regardless. So, and if you're talking about the elitist side of it, I mean, the people that you're looking at are people who are just less fortunate than we are. And it's just transport is as much of a challenge as getting into a pool.
But you just said we're within, everybody's within a couple of kilometres of the ocean.
Absolutely, right? But still, you want to get from some places in Auckland to a beach. If you've got a car, it's 20 minutes tops. If you don't have a car, you're a teenager and you've got folks that are working double jobs or something like that. How are you going to do
3 buses and a bicycle?
3 buses and a bicycle. So how are you going to do that? How do you make it easy for people? The only way I think you can really do it is by having more pools. But as we know, running a pool safely and effectively is just not cheap. I know that Auckland Council runs a number of pools, but essentially they put money into those.
It's like a shitload of money to build it, right? It's like $3 million or some ridiculous
and just the operating costs to run a pool effectively it's a tough business. It's not something that you're going to go and make money out of easily.
Well, guys, let us know what you think. cleverdixnz@gmail.com. I reckon there's work to be done, and I think there's a ton of talent in New Zealand, and I would love to see more people in the ocean. I'd like to see more people in the swimming pool. If you guys have got any ideas for us to raise the flag, give us a shout and we can have a chat about it.
That sounds like a great idea, Duncan. I'm with you. I'd just like to see more people really enjoying being in the water. I think it's wonderful. It's been wonderful for me, and I'd just like to see those benefits shared by more people everywhere.
Good stuff. When last did you swim, Jim?
This morning. And yourself?
Also, funny enough, I swam with a guy called Jim. He looked like you.
Well, I swam in the same sea as a guy called Duncan, but he headed off and did his own thing. He's a bit elitist actually when it comes to swimming in the sea.
Good news is that the water was just touching 18 degrees this morning, so I reckon summer's here, and all of those non-elitists can come and join us and get some ocean swimming done.
Don't even need a wetsuit, just goggles and off you go. Cheers, guys.
Ciao, ciao.